Yesterday, we saw Mexican retail sales data, and trade balance data is released tomorrow. I'm on the line with Peter Grimsditch of Oxford Business Group to discuss his forecasts for the outcome of these releases. Peter, welcome. Firstly, looking at the Mexican retail sales data, which decreased 0.10% in May of 2014 over the previous month, it is apparent that larger retail stores are seeing competition from the informal economy, Mexico's street markets. Did yesterday's data surprise you, and what do you foresee for the future of this struggling retail economy?
The first thing I have to say is that I'm a great follower of Disraeli, who believed that there were lies, damned lies, and statistics. And secondly, I would not take 1 month's figures, especially with such a minor movement as 0.2%, as significant of anything. There are also other reports that put the May figures of higher retail sales of 1.6. This was reported by a German agency. So I think 1 month's figures we should not take too much notice of. There is an overall forecast of the increase in retail for the next 4 or 5 years, to go from $395 billion to about $517 billion a year. That's between 2013 and 2018, and that would be an increase of around 30%, which I think is probably what's going to happen. It will not happen, as these things never do, it will not happen uniformly. I think it's also worth mentioning that the informal economy in Mexico comprises about 30% of the economy. And when you've got minor downturns of spending power, of course you're going to get the traditional retail of street markets and corner stores and things having a slight boost at the expense of the new kids on the block, the organised mall retail. I don't see it as tremendously significant, quite honestly.
Mexican balance of trade data is released tomorrow. Mexico recorded a trade surplus of over $423 million in June 2014. What do you foresee as the outlook of tomorrow's data release?
Well, again, it's 1 month's figures, and you can't really pontificate about a country's economy based on 1 month's figures, whether it's up, down, or sideways, because even individual transactions can skew 1 month's figures. What is interesting to look at in the Mexican economy is a current account, and when the deficit shot up for the second quarter of this year from the first quarter, so that we're now on target to have about the same level of deficit that there was for the whole of 2013. 2013 was a deficit in the current account of around 22.3 billion. That's 2013. That figure in itself was up by 50% on the previous year, which is really not good news. There is absolutely no sign this year, in 2014 yet, that anything is getting any better. The first quarter didn't look too bad, but then the second quarter, with the figure of just under 7 billion, has put it right back on track to equal the 2013 figures. I think there is a lot of uncertainty in the Mexican economy. There's a lot of potential. I think it's the whole country is probably still a bit shell-shocked by an attempt at the biggest economic reforms the country's ever seen, and it hasn't really settled down. And I remember saying the last time we spoke that in any case, the words being put out by the Mexican government and its spokesman, various protagonists of the reforms, are, in my view, far too optimistic, because they give the opinion that everything is going to be rosy by 3 weeks on Friday. And this, of course, is absolute nonsense. It's not. I'm not poo-pooing the reforms. I'm not underplaying their significance. And I do think that they will have a marked effect on the economy as a whole, especially, of course, in the energy sector. But I think it's going to be a rocky road at the beginning. When you look at last year's figures, oil went down on average $3 a barrel, and Mexican production continued to go down, and that made a huge chunk on its own in the figures. So I'm quite optimistic about the economy. I just think it will take time.
And finally, the Bank of Mexico released current account data for the second quarter of 2014 yesterday. The result was predicted to show a $3 billion deficit, as economists expected improving exports to narrow the deficit, which sat at $4.53 billion in the first quarter. How did yesterday's data release reflect this forecast?
Yeah, I mean, what the central bank said on Monday was that, on August 25, was that the current account deficit was $6.982 billion, and that is huge. And as I just said, it was a bad sign for getting the current account deficit on track. Now, that said, if you look at the overall figures, then having an annual deficit of 23 billion is not catastrophic by any manner of means. I mean, it's a relatively small amount. It's something that the government will need to address, will need to get in balance and in focus. But it's not disastrous, and there is plenty of time to do it. And Mexico is a big place with big people, and its potential for a retail-driven boost to the economy is enormous. It's just not going to happen very quickly.
Well, that's all we've time for. Thank you, Peter, for all your insights. Click back tomorrow when I'll be looking at the krona. Goodbye for now.